As the Trump administration celebrates the president's first 100 days back in office, some new polling would suggest that Trump's popularity is waning. So we have different media organizations, including, surprise, surprise, ABC, CNN. Well, they've published their own polls that claim the president's approval rating at this 100 days mark is the lowest of known polling data. But we must all ask, how accurate are these polls? Do they really reflect the actual feelings of the American people? Or do they just merely reflect the people whom these media companies cater towards? Well, here to discuss all this with me now is Mark Mitchell. He's a chief pollster at Rasmussen Reports. Mark, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to have you.
Yeah, great to be back.
All right, I'm looking forward to getting your take on this. You actually posted on X that you said all of this is just a psychological operation. Explain what you meant by that.
Well, as an honest pollster, I'm basically daily fighting an information war against the lying mainstream media, who, in my opinion, appears to have thrown out all profit interest in attempting to undermine the only anti-establishment candidate that I remember. And everybody's focused on Trump approval. You look at Google search volume, you can go look at Google Trends, and you can see that people are searching for the term Trump approval now pretty much more than they ever have. And for some reason, Trump approval is way more interesting than Biden approval, Obama approval, or Bush approval ever was. So that's telling me people are seeing headlines, they're hearing stories, they're getting push notifications to their phone, and it's all the mainstream media trying to undermine Trump to convince you that he's not popular. Another sign is that some of the pollsters like ABC News, Washington Post, and New York Times haven't even really polled Trump approval in months, and all of a sudden, 6 of the pollsters dumped polls over the weekend that were really horrible for Trump. And it's the same kind of people who were 6, 7, and even 8 points to the left of me back in the fall. So what I consider is they probably just waited and said, hey, I got a little surprise for Trump on his 100 days. Rasmussen Reports gets elections right, and I don't think that you can poll approval without getting elections right. And we're the only people in the industry still polling approval on a daily basis. And what I can tell you is that if you take the first 6 months of Obama's first term away and look at the rest of his polling, that's pretty much where Trump approval has been and is going to be. We're in a situation where it's like peak threat of violence. People are, really political divisive. You're never going to see a Trump 60% approval rating, but I don't think it's going to drop below 45% either. And what I think is a much more important number is the fact that our right direction polling is setting records on a weekly basis now because Americans are finally getting what they voted for.
All right, so explain that, the right direction polling. What is that referring to? The people of America saying we're going in the right direction, but what is that saying to us? What are you seeing from that polling?
Well, we've been in business 20 years, and just with alongside presidential approval, the question we ask is the country headed in the right direction, or has it gotten off on the wrong track? And people have been really unhappy for a long time. Right direction has always been less than wrong track, except for 1 week. And that week happened a month and a half ago under Trump's second administration. It got up to 48%, highest it's ever been in our polling history. And now it's setting a record for 13 consecutive weeks, higher than 42% or higher. The previous record was only 7 weeks, and that was also in a Trump term. And that's because Trump's an economic populist. And the general trend has been that Trump was elected because the American dream, our futures, the ability to put food on the table, to form families, to buy affordable houses, all that stuff has been stolen and shipped overseas, and Americans understand that.
Wow. All right, so we have pretty strong differences in polling information. Of course, polls can say anything you want them to say, but Rasmussen is on target because you do authentic polling. Is it fair to say or assume perhaps that some of these other media organizations have a conflict of interest, that this is just a political push? You alluded to that, but do you think that really is the underlying factor that's driving these numbers that they're putting out?
I think the trend we're seeing is a collapse in integrity in all of our institutions. And if you see this happen in the FBI, if you see it happen in corporate boardrooms, if you see it happen in church denominations, it's probably happening in newsrooms too. And that's if your boss or your boss's boss or your boss's friend in DC really want some headline and your paycheck depends on it, you're probably going to give them the headline. And are some people doing it not on purpose? Sure. And also, there are some honest pollsters that are out there having their headlines and their numbers cherry picked as well. That's, the information gatekeepers in these media organizations are very effective at spinning these tales. But even if you don't look at polling, if you just look at the percent of voters who turned out for Trump and how many of those voters he won in his second term, we're not talking about polling. We're talking about actually people that showed up and voted. Trump did really good this time around. He got 32% of the electorate. He only got 28% his first time around. He increased, which means people saw his first term and they said, I want more of that. And they came and voted for him again. And that puts him a lot higher than, many other previous presidents, higher than JFK, higher than both Clinton terms, higher than Bush 1, higher than the second term of George W. Bush. And Obama came in higher than Trump in his first term, and then got less of a share of the vote in his second election. So
let me ask you this.
Trump is something.
Yeah, in relation to that, I know AOC and Bernie Sanders have been going all over the place. Is there any polling that they somehow are moving the needle, be it with a third party or just in general? Is there any polling on them?
No, I think they're just indicative of how bad the situation the Democrats are in. The Democrats don't really have a platform or authenticity to convince voters that all of a sudden they have an answer to MAGA. And so there's been this vacuum, and I think it's being filled by their noisiest people, Bernie Sanders and AOC, who quite frankly poll not that great. They are third, fourth, fifth when ranked against other Democrats about who they want to run the primary, but they're the only ones out there speaking. And I'll tell you, they have no chance. Americans fundamentally think that free market economies are better. They're not going to vote for open socialist candidates. And right now, they just need an answer to Trump MAGA populism, and that's it. But there's a vacuum in the Democrat Party.
Mark Mitchell, Chief Pollster at Rasmussen Reports, thank you so much for joining us. Great info.